Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining tonight, whether you're watching live or on replay. My name is Rita Young, and I am here tonight with Bob Spano with an organization called Maggie's House. And if you caught last week's conversation with Barbara Monday, we're continuing conversations talking with families about what options are out there currently for individuals or adults with intellectual developmental disabilities when, as parents, family members, we pass. So, what are the options? And if there are the options that are out there are not desirable to you or your family, you can be like Barbara or Bob and create something new. And so that's what we're going to continue our conversation on tonight. So, and I see Heidi and Lisa are joining us. Hello. Thank you both for joining us tonight. Feel free to ask questions, pop some insights in. Would love to hear from you. So I can't wait to have this conversation because I love talking with folks that start something brand new. So Bob, tell us a little bit about Maggie's House and what inspired you to start the organization, the nonprofit.
Well, I have a son who's 43 years old who's developmentally disabled. So I've got 40 years of experience with working within the developmentally disabled community. Um, and in 2011, the Arc of Greater Columbus was formed, and I
Okay.
was local office for the Arc of Georgia and the National Arc. I was on the founding board. I wasn't the founder, but I was on the original board. In 2014, by 2014, there'd been so much attrition that I was the only original board member left with the ARC in Columbus. But we continued trying to move forward. In 2016, I was chair of the housing committee for the ARC of Greater Columbus, and as such, started exploring possibilities of housing. I had experience with trying to find a home for my son. I had tried the group homes, couldn't find anything really suitable. I tried the host homes,
Mm-hmm.
and the horror stories you hear about them are mostly not true. The homes that we had experience with were nice homes for the most part, but these are homes that are at the bottom line for-profit endeavors. And if it comes down to the choice of the individual or the home, the individual is going to lose out. So they try to take people in this concept and fit them into a box. This is a home, this is a room, this is where you stay. You're going to do these things. So even my biggest problem, my son's biggest problem at the first home was he couldn't take his dog. So I kept the dog for him. But he left everything behind except for what he could put in his bedroom, and moved into another home. His activities, his friends, really were left behind. They said, "Yeah, you can go bowling with your friends, but only when it was convenient for them to take him." So,
Okay.
his daily activities that he was doing already, with like the Pop Austin Center here in Columbus, which has Parks and Recreation and has activities for adults with developmental disabilities. He couldn't go there because it was more convenient for the home to take him to a daycare center.
Okay, so his life became very restricted.
Right.
It sounds like. And he was about how old? He was maybe in his early 30s?
Yeah.
Okay, so you tried the group home and so he wasn't happy, or was he happy?
No, he wasn't.
Okay, it doesn't sound like it.
Fact,
Yeah.
the biggest challenge to me that I had problem dealing with is that I had to go pick him up every Friday afternoon.
So, Bob, someone is saying, oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Someone is asking us, I hate to interrupt, that can we boost the volume? Are folks having an issue hearing either Bob or I? If you could let us know. If you could let me know. Yeah, you might want to maybe you turn up your volume perhaps. But if others are having an issue, please let us know. Okay.
Yeah, I believe
All right.
microphone is as high as it can go. I can
Yeah, I
try
think mine as
drum it
well.
out
Let's
a little
see.
better.
Yep. Okay, so let's continue on. And hopefully, again, please alert us if there's anything going on. So, can't hear Bob, seems distorted. Hmm. Okay.
I don't know what to say there.
Yeah, you want to turn the maybe put the
Let me see if I can.
mic a
Is
little.
that a little better? Maybe.
Is that a little better, folks? Folks, let us know
Is,
if y'all can hear Bob.
can you hear me? Okay.
Okay. I can hear you. So anyone else? Rita is
That,
good, so mine is good. Okay, Lisa says I can hear him clearly. Okay. So we're going to continue on. Please keep letting us know. Love to know
okay.
that. Yep. So he was not happy. So that's kind of where we left it.
Right. The homes, as I said, they're for profit. I'm not saying they're bad. In fact, the last home he stayed in was in a very exclusive neighborhood in Columbus. But he had to do what they wanted him to do. His daily activities were out. Uh, if he went to their daycare, which, quite frankly, I'm not saying anything negative about the daycare, but he was placed in a daycare center where the main activity for the day was coloring paper. Well,
Okay.
my son is much more advanced than that, so he was bored. I
Yeah.
mean, and he likes to get out and walk and such as that. He couldn't do that. In fact, they had no yard in the center where he was, so he was inside all day long. Um, but again, like I said, it was their bottom line was they had to turn a profit.
Okay.
And so they put you into this place. Yeah, they have a bed. In fact, if you look at what the state of Georgia has, if you ask a sport coordinator about housing for somebody, they're going to look at a list called beds available.
Right.
So, they're finding a bed. They're not finding a home.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
So, wow. So he wasn't happy. And then, so at what point did you say, I think it's time that we sort of create something new here?
well, then we have to tell a horror story.
Okay.
Uh,
Tell her. Oh, do
he
you
was
want?
in this last home, like I said, a very exclusive neighborhood.
Okay.
Very nice home, really, very nice people. One of the residents in the home was a lady in her 50s, um, autistic, nonverbal, and she was being treated for cancer. And
Okay.
she had had a chemotherapy treatment the day before, and she did not want to leave the house that day. She didn't feel well. She wanted to stay home. They
Mm-hmm.
forced her into a car to take her to the daycare.
Mm-hmm.
She started having a fit. I mean, she was very shouting and not wanting to. She couldn't speak, but
Right.
fighting back. She didn't want to go. She wanted to stay home and
Yeah.
stay in bed. They didn't want to leave somebody home and have to have somebody in the house through the day. Then they tried to make my son get in the back seat with her, and he had a meltdown. He had a panic attack, and that's what the doctors explained it afterwards. He refused to get in the car, so they tried to force him into the car. He fought back. He tried to
Mm-hmm.
run away, but they restrained him. They called the police.
Oh my goodness.
The police
Oh.
came. Now they were very good, but they
Mm-hmm.
took him to uh, uh, um, the Bradley Center in Columbus. It's a treatment center for um, emotional problems. Well, Bradley Center didn't want him, obviously, because he
Right.
doesn't have an emotional problem. He has a developmental, intellectual problem. But of course, I got a phone call when they took him there. So I went and picked him up and I brought him back home.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I started looking for alternatives. And of course, I knew that Lars had a home in Atlanta. And so I investigated there and I saw what they were doing. And I've been communicating with Lars in Atlanta, particularly extensively for the past couple of years. They've been very helpful. Um,
So tell
and
folks about Lars is actually it started in Europe, correct? Was it France or
yeah,
Belgium? I can't remember.
um, France,
France. Okay.
uh,
France. And it
the,
is based on a concept where individuals with disabilities live with typical folks in a family style
right,
atmosphere.
right.
Yeah.
At that time, people with intellectual disabilities were in mental institutions. And the government started trying to get them out of the institutions. and a priest uh, talked about it in his church, and a businessman that attended that church got three men, brought them from the mental institution, and kept them, and they stayed in his home with him. So that's what Lars grew out of. Lars International, Lars USA, and then there's a Lars home in Atlanta, there's one in Jacksonville, and there's one in Mobile. And so I started looking at that model, and even considered seeing if my son could go in one of those homes. But when I look at it, Columbus is 2 hours away from Atlanta. So if he moved there, there would be a very good home. I have no doubt of that. But he would never see family. I don't. If you're in the Atlanta area, you know what it's like to travel around Atlanta. So to actually go to Atlanta, for him to come to Columbus for any kind of to see the rest of a family or whatever, is a major affair. So I decided we needed to do something similar in Columbus. So, like I said, I had been the head of the housing committee with the ARC, and actually we're moving towards establishing a house, but the some of the members of the board were afraid of liability, and so the board was divided over it, and we ended up actually the board just folded
Okay.
because they didn't want to go along with anything trying to establish housing. So that's at the point. That's when I started looking around and looked in Atlanta and all. And so at church, I was talking with some friends at church and about the situation and about the fact that we had been working towards a housing for adults with developmental disabilities, and they were aware of that. And so I was reporting what had happened. And two of these friends have their own ministry in Columbus, Our Lady of Rose Hill Ministries, and Our Lady of Rose Hill uh, serves the underprivileged. Um, they were established 14 years ago to serve the poor and the marginalized through the living of the corporal and spiritual works of mercy in daily life. So they brought people from Nigeria for medical treatment. They do medical treatment for migrant farm workers, undocumented immigrants. They provide funding for emergency basis for shelter, donated clothing. They taught immigrants to read and write. They served over 50,000 meals since they've been established. Uh, so they said that fits Maggie's house, our concept of homes, fits into their mission, their ministry in serving the marginalized and the underprivileged. So they decided they would help us. So together we formed a new board. We established our incorporation, got registered with the state, applied for a 501c3. And our Maggie's house primary purpose is housing. We'll do other things somewhat, but our mission is to provide housing for adults with developmental disabilities. And we're following the model of the large communities, which are nonprofit, and as opposed to taking the person and putting them in a bed in a house. Instead, we take the person and we design a house around that person. Because that person receives Medicaid supports through waivers and all, they have funds available for daily support activities based on their needs. So, like my son has workers paid by his Medicare waiver who come and pick him up, take him to to his daily activities. In fact, he had a dental appointment this morning. The workers came, picked him up, took him to the dentist, brought him back home afterwards.
Okay, Bob, you
So
keep talking. You keep talking. My son is telling me he's got a headache, so I'm going to put you on mute. I'm going to put me on mute.
okay,
Get him
take
some,
care of
and
that.
I'll be right back.
Okay, and my son is sleeping right now because he takes some sedatives before he goes to the dentist, so he's down for the rest of the day. But at any rate, um, we decided that we would design the home around the person. My son receives the Medicaid funding for his particular care, and Medicaid, the waivers are designed around the person. So if you have a person who needs um, constant physical support, Medicaid will pay for that, whatever needs that person has. What Medicaid doesn't pay for is housing. There are some housing supports within Medicaid, but in this particular instance, uh, they don't. So Maggie's house fills that niche of providing the housing designed for the person, and whatever, because we're a nonprofit, whatever funds are not coming from Medicaid, we can seek from the community. So that's really where we are right now. Is we're building. We've been here a year with the pandemic and all slowed us down in our work, but we're still working at it, and we're here. We're raising money to working towards opening our first home. We have several things that we have to do. Primarily, we've been raising awareness, and now my son's wanting to get in the picture.
That's quite all right. I
You can come sit by me and watch.
My son was knocking
This
saying,
is
"I have a headache.
this
I
is
have a headache." And I'm like, "Okay."
this is Danny. He went to
Hi,
the
Danny.
dentist today, so he's been down sleeping for a while. He can't hear you though; he can only hear me. But at any rate, I lost my train of thought there.
So you're raising funds, you're building,
Yes,
right?
we're
So you're going
working
to actually
towards.
build from the bottom up, or are you going to?
Yes,
Lisa says hi to Danny, by the way. Um, so instead of purchasing an existing home and rehabbing it, you're going to build something brand new.
we're open.
Okay.
Whatever comes our way,
Okay.
I'm exploring all possibilities. In fact, I was talking to one possibility of a lot to build on today with a person. But we're open to whatever. I have a realtor who's working with us, and she's watching for the right opportunity. Obviously, because of the vulnerability of the residents, we can't go just anywhere. It's
Right.
got to be a location that is relatively secure, and where they can be safe. Because my son will go with anybody. He never meets a stranger, uh, and so uh, he's got to be sheltered. That's the best way to put it.
Right, protected under from exploitation, of course. Yeah.
Right.
So, how many people do you envision? Someone's asking would live in a home.
Uh, and again, it depends on the large home. The ones in Atlanta, um, and most of them will have 4 or 5 core members, and then there'll be at least 2 or 3 um, support persons that live in the home with them and work with them. Everyone, the concept is everyone has a one-on-one support person. However, like my son, he doesn't need somebody to stay with him 24/7.
Okay.
So he could be in the house with other people as long as there's somebody there. Uh, you know, he'll be fine. And then his support person come in during the day and take him for his daily activities. But you live together as a family, not as a bunch of people boarding in a house somewhere. They are a family. The
So it's very
the
intentional.
residents,
Yeah, very
yeah,
intentional.
the the house is designed around the person. So whoever comes in there, the house will be adapted to meet their needs. They'll live together as a family. They eat together, clean the house, whatever their house chores are together to the best of their abilities with supports available.
And so, someone is asking if you participant direct your son's services now.
Yes, he has a
Yes,
comp waiver.
a comp waiver. Okay.
Yes.
Someone else asked what type of waiver. Rita, I see that. Yeah, it is a comp waiver. So you have folks here saying hello to Danny. Heidi Lisa K is the president of the board for special needs Cobb, and she would love to talk to you more on your concept. So just know folks are very, very interested. I see Danny waving in the
He
background.
wants to
That's
ask
great.
a question.
Oh,
Danny, people
absolutely.
are saying hey to you. What's your question? we've been looking for a job. Danny had a job working a few hours a week at a little restaurant out here. That we're out in the country, so it's a little pizza takeout restaurant, and he was working there for a while. But unfortunately, that job ran out because they, were not getting the business with the pandemic like it is, so they had to cut back on staff. So we were
Sure.
last week
Yeah.
at a Dollar General, and they said they would hire him as a to help with stocking. So that's something we're going to be looking at. If he can work part time for them, a few hours a week. Of course, again, the way the things are set up, he's limited on how much he can earn. And still keep his waiver, but we'll do what we can. Uh, and again, the supports that he has through the comp waiver help him to accomplish this. And in the Lars, not the Lars, but in Maggie's house, if uh, someone has a job, again, they will be supported in their daily activities, so they can be supported in their job.
So folks are asking, and I don't know if you've considered this or not from last week, and I don't think we got to those questions. People were saying, I have a son or daughter maybe who has seizures, or maybe who has more intense support needs or medical needs. Is that something that this kind of concept can support?
Again, the home is designed around the person, and Medicaid, if you have the waiver, pays for the support persons that they need. So yes, if somebody were moving into the house with the Medicaid waiver and they had seizures, then and in fact, one of the persons who will probably be in our first home does have seizures. Since they found a recent medication for him, he hasn't had a seizure, so we pray that'll stay that way. But he has to have 24/7 supports. He's in a wheelchair. If that's what it takes, then the house that he goes into will be adapted to his needs.
So is it adapted around one person or two people? What do you envision for that first house? And you may have said this, so forgive me. I might have been getting the headache meds for my son, but what do you envision that first house? Is it one person with a developmental disability and or two people and three people that are neurotypical? What might that look like?
Uh, I I personally see 3 or 4 disabled persons with
Okay.
at least 2 others support persons with their living there in the home. The other support persons would come in for the day, but it really would depend. Obviously, you're talking now 6 bedroom house. You're not going to find
Okay.
many of those around. Uh, so it really just depends on what is available and what we're able to do at the time. Since we
And so who would operate the house? I'm getting into details. That's how I think.
That
So
is a big detail
yeah,
because
yeah.
at the top of my list right now of what we need to do is we need to uh, find an executive director with experience. And in fact, in order to become a Medicaid provider, they require at least one person in the administration with Medicaid experience. So we can't just start it up and become a Medicaid provider. And of course, those Medicaid funds are necessary for survival. So we're starting a search. I'm actually targeted after the first year of a person to come on as probably a consultant for like 6 months uh, as executive director, and then hopefully would be at the point where we could actually bring that person on board full-time employee as we're looking more towards actually opening a home. And I know I'm my heart is in it, but I don't have the expertise to do all of that. I know
Right.
that I have to reach out and find the right people for the job.
So folks are asking questions. Heidi is asking, are you wanting to build or buy a home? And I believe Heidi, Bob said he's open, to either option. Correct?
Correct. If somebody wants
Correct. Okay.
to donate a home, we'll take it. We'll do what we can with it. Uh, it's, if not, we're going to keep raising money, and when the opportunity comes, if we buy a lot, we'll start working towards building a home. If we find a home that we can purchase and adapt, we'll do that. But you have to remember that now the home has to comply with HUD regulations like handrails in the bathroom, hallways and doorways wide enough for a wheelchair. Which again is where the executive director comes in because they know more about what the requirements are. But if we take
And
an
so,
existing home, it's got to be adapted. That's the thing.
yeah, gotcha. True, true. So someone is asking, does Maggie's house have to meet the same house code requirements as a group home? I wonder if I could convert my home at some point to a large style home.
Again, we're coming back to what the actual regulations are with HUD and with Medicaid, but I don't see why that could not be done unless the house itself is just not adaptable. If you only have 24-inch or 40, 24-inch hallways, some houses actually that narrow, a wheelchair is never going to go down. You have to tear the wall down to
Okay.
make it
Yeah,
adaptable.
yeah, of
But
course.
then
Yeah.
I'm looking at my house, the way it's designed, I could add a wing onto my house and build it to those standards, and it would qualify because it just has to be available for the person, that needs the wheelchair, the resident,
Right.
you know. And of course, you got to be able to. HUD prefers ground access as opposed to a ramp, but you got to be able to get a wheelchair in and out, however it's located. So, if
And
you're on
have
the
you done
side of a cliff,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah, yeah. Have you done research with into HUD and some of the programs that they offer? And
yes,
you have. Okay.
yes. And there's possibilities there. In fact, assistance in building, hiring, adapting, whatever it may be. Uh, those things are there. But if you ever looked at a HUD manual, uh, you just about have to be an attorney to go
Oh,
through
I'm
it all.
sorry. Yeah, I can only imagine. So I wanted to catch this question. Julie asks, how are you going to get paid staffing while your child sleeps?
That's part of the nonprofit, and it's also part of the Medicaid waiver. If a person has to have 24/7 supports, then that means that Medicaid will pay for a person to be there while the child sleeps. For example, the one person that we're looking at, who will probably eventually be in Maggie's house, that's in a wheelchair. He's nonverbal. He has seizures. He's a nice young man, but he will always have to have someone with him. You you might leave him long enough to go to the bathroom yourself, but
Right.
you can't
Okay.
leave him for long. He can't
So
even
I know
call
that
you when
they,
he has a
yeah,
problem.
okay, so you said that the nonprofit will supplement. I know that they're looking at eliminating some of the additional staffing hours under the waiver for that 24-hour if you participant direct. But anyway, all of that's up in the air. Sounds like you've definitely done your research. So the other folks that live there, the typical folks, do they pay rent? Do they get a discount on the rent? Do they, have you thought those
Part of
kinds of
part
things
of their
out? Yeah.
compensation is that they get free room and board.
Oh, okay.
So that is part of their compensation. Plus, we'll have insurance for them. We're not going to expect somebody to live there and not have some kind of insurance. So that's again part of the expenses that has to be calculated in when you actually open the home. Um,
Yeah.
and now you consider that
Mhm.
that most of the support persons are only going to be with you for a couple of years. Uh, the two young men that Daniel has working with him now are college students. One I'm just graduated, but it's college students, which works well for college students because they can take their courses, their classes whenever they need, and adapt their schedule around it. Um, but normally, um, what the Lars homes do is they bring people in, they train them, and the person agrees to work for at least 2 years, and they're paid, but again, they have room and board. Uh, or if they don't stay in residence 24 hours a day, then they would be paid commensurate so that they could have a place to live. Um, they do get a couple of days off every week, so there's a lot of planning and scheduling that also has to go into any operation like that. And when you're dealing with government regulations, you have to consider they're going to change too. So
Right, right.
you've got to have some resources to fall back on, and that's
So,
where the
yeah.
donors and all come in. I mean, we've applied for grants, we continue to apply for grants, but the real lifeblood of any nonprofit is the repeat donors. I'll put that out there because we need those people. We need, even if it's $5 a month. If you have 100 people giving you $5 a month, and you've got $500 a month coming in to help supplement whatever expenses come up. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. So someone is Rita Haggerty is saying CRA. So I think, yeah, I think Rita, I think you're right. It's CRA is what they would be utilizing for that 24/7 support or 24-hour support. Heidi asks, have you worked with your commissioners? So would there be special licensing you need to go through your board of commissioners?
um, I have looked into it. I've talked to a few people. Um, in when you go in the city of Columbus, Columbus has more restrictive regulations about group homes than the state of Georgia does. But HUD has what a rule about what they call clustering, and
Okay.
that is where and Columbus, like I said, is even more restrictive. In the city of Columbus, if you have a group home on a street, you can't have a second group home on that same street. Uh, I understand the concept behind it, but where actually Maggie's house would fall on that regulation, I really don't know. Uh, but again, that's where the executive director comes in, and where we will have to have an attorney working for us on a consistent basis as we reach that point. I know that um, there are other homes. Let me put it that way. They operate. They're able to get along. So, and like I said, Lars Atlanta particularly has been very helpful in our plans about how we go forward. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
So you talked about Larson, their training. Is that something that you would also have for the individuals who live in the homes, the typical folks? Would you use their training or model something, or would they allow you to do that?
I think they would actually allow it, but there's a lot of various companies that do give training, and we'll do what we have to. We'll go where we need to get the training we need to. We have to do these things in order to become a Medicaid provider. So we'll do whatever is necessary, and we'll
And
find the people to do it.
what is the demand in your area? I'm scrolling back to some of these questions here because someone was in Columbus and I had it from Columbus. And I'm sorry I can't see your name, but here's the question here. I'm located in the Columbus. Also, my son is high functioning. Man with DD, is Maggie's house an option for him? So what is your demand, and what is your typical demographic of people who are interested, in terms of what ages of the individuals, and does it span across all disability
All
types?
across all disabilities. Um, I've got to say that the biggest challenge in Columbus is actually public apathy. That and support groups that are rather territorial. It's
Hmm.
one of the problems that we had with ARC when we're trying to move forward with ARC is that we'd contact various groups. I don't want to call any names, but they were somewhat supportive, but asked them to participate. No, even this past June we had the road show that was shown around the state, the Treasure Maps Road Show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we had that here in Columbus. I reached out to other agencies to join us. We had it all set up. We had the venue. We had the venue. We did the show. We offered them just space to put their own table up and talk about their services. Only one that actually came and participated was the Down syndrome group and the Columbus State University Goals program, which is a program that trains teachers for special ed. So, um, it was open to all of them, and a lot of
That
contacted
community
weeks,
building, it takes
months
a
in
lot of work.
advance.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It
and
takes a tremendous
particularly
amount
the
of work.
agencies that
Mhm.
provide services, they just seem afraid that if we do something, we're going to take away something they're getting. So,
But so how many, what type of demand would you say, how many folks have expressed an interest? 10, 20, 15? Your
right
best
now,
guess.
it's to actually express interest to Maggie's house. There's maybe 15 or 20. I looked at the
Okay. Okay.
Well, the 5,000, 6,000 waiting. We also showed that here in Columbus through Maggie's house, and I looked at the statistics just a few weeks ago, and as of June, uh, according to the state of Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, that waiting list, they don't call it a waiting list, but that waiting list is now over 7,000 people. In Region 6, which is the Columbus area, there was between 5 and 600 on that waiting list. And you got to remember, those are just the ones who have been approved for a waiver. They haven't received it yet. They're on a waiting list to receive a waiver. So, based on that, there's probably in the neighborhood, to me, I would think at least 1,000 people in this region who need the services, whether they've applied for it or not. And of
Right.
course,
Right.
some
Most
have never been,
definitely.
have applied and not been approved. I'm not worried
Most
about
definitely.
finding residents, and I'd hate to say residents, core members, the people,
Right. Core
their
members.
home. Uh, our problem is not that; it's raising the money to provide the homes for the people as they come. And if
Okay.
anybody thinks they might be uh, interested, then they just need to get with us and let's talk about it. Let's see, because again, the home is designed around the person, and I see it. I think that probably we would end up with homes that are primarily people of similar capabilities. I think they will probably be most happy there. But then I have to look and say that people who are wheelchair bound or whatever has the seizures, they have to have a home too, and
Mm-hmm.
they're in a
Mm-hmm.
home now with people who don't have the problems. So um, we have to be inclusive. We have to include everyone.
Oh,
Just like
absolutely.
one of
Absolutely.
the problems that I ran into with my son is we're Catholic. So since he was a little guy, he's we go to church every Sunday. We go for special services and such as that. Um, the homes that he stayed in, again, nice people, good Christian homes, but they could not understand why he needed to go to church every Sunday. So I would have to go
Hmm.
get him and take him to church, and they wouldn't bring him to me either. I had to go get him.
Okay.
Of course,
Huh. Interesting. Interesting. So here is the question, Bob. What about continuity into the far future? How confident are you the setup will be functioning for the residents as long as they live? I think that is the question.
and that is up to the board. And it won't be me alone. It's going to take people, and particularly family members who are concerned and care to make sure it happens. I have extended family that would take my son in if necessary. They're not going to leave him on the street, but I don't want him to be Uncle Danny staying in their house. I want
Mm-hmm.
Danny to have his own house,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
he can go visit family. He'll have a support person to take him to visit family. They can come visit him in his house, but it's going to be up to us to make sure that that house is going to be viable. And that's where the nonprofit organization comes into play. It's got to be established with a proper board and a proper staff to make it forever functional.
So Tina asks here, and Tina, I can see your name, which is great. Will you have nursing staff and behavior specialists on staff or on call? Is that part of the plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, again, it's according to the needs of the home, but at the same time, as I mentioned, Our Lady of Rose Hill, uh, their mission, uh, Susan Wazorek is one of is Susan and Jerry Wazorek who have this company or this group, this mission, and Susan is a nurse practitioner. So at this point, any medical needs that we need, she would take care of. But again, um, Medicaid waiver pays for any kind of nursing assistance or whatever the person may need. So, and when you go into the home, it's just like going into any other uh, home that's supported through Medicaid. Uh, you do an ISP, an individual service
Right.
plan for each person, and whatever needs that individual has, Medicaid pays for in the home where they'll be.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah, they will have whatever they need. And if another of our board members is a counselor, certified counselor, she actually deals right now with drug rehabilitation. but she's a certified counselor. So
So, what would be, Bob? I think I've gone through all the questions. If I have not, then someone please let me know. What would you advise family members who are just starting to have this conversation about, long-term supports? Looking at what the options are out there and making those decisions. Any words of wisdom to advise family members?
first, don't assume anything. Don't assume everything will be okay when I'm gone. Second is start and explore every possibility and make plans. And then say, call us, get with us. We'll sit down and talk about it. We'll see. And if we're not the right place for you, that's fine. But you need to look and see what's there, and make the plans now while you still can. And I particularly reach out to people with children, because right now the supports they get through the school system and all, I hear a lot of complaints, but they're pretty good for the most part.
Hmm.
But what people don't realize is that this child that's in high school right now, in a few years, is going to be an adult, and they won't be eligible for the supports that they receive in special ed in school. And um, right now, the number of waivers that are added each year by the state of Georgia is less than the number of high school seniors who graduate out in the community. Those are the people that get on that waiting list if they're lucky, but they sit at home waiting for sometimes years until they
Yes.
can actually get supports to get out of the house.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see, anyone. Yes. So the person that's talking about the ISP, and only if there's a person has enough money for it, I would agree with that too. So, how far in the future would you start planning? So, say someone is in the 18 years old. So, would you start that young?
I would start as soon as I knew they had a developmental disability.
Okay.
That's what I tell people. Be proactive. Start at the very first stages when you know there's a problem, and start looking for what the needs are for the child, and what the future needs will be. For one of the things that Head Start and all uh, tries to make people understand is that the sooner you start working on the needs for that person, the more progress you will be able to make over the years. So if you wait till they're 18, I don't want to say it's too late, but you've started very late to try to give that young person the opportunities that they will need to have an independent life.
So, in other words, as family members, though, starting to look at what the options are, going to different providers, talking to individuals like yourself. So, interviewing, doing your own research to see what options you're most comfortable with.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's critical. You can't rely on somebody else to do it for you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've gone through all the questions, Bob, and I just thank you again so much for this impromptu conversation. I think our technology went really well tonight. We had some great questions. So, again, if you are watching on the replay or watching live, thank you. And I will include, there should be a link to Maggie's house and Bob's contact information. But we can most certainly include that, or I can include that in the description as well. So, thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you for
Thank
having me. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Yes, thank you, and everyone have a wonderful evening. You all take good care. Good night.
Good night.